All right, this is your first drawing. This is it. This is drawing number 1, Inlay. Now in this video, we're going to talk about inlay and we're going to draw it. Also, there's a few other things we need to talk about. The first one is taping your paper to the board. You don't want your paper just floating around. You need to tape it down securely to your board. So there is a method to this. I'm going to hold my T-square in my weak hand, so I'm a righty, so it's in my left hand. I'm going to rest my paper across my T-square. I'm going to put it generally in the center of the board. And then I want to rip off your tape before, because you just have the rolls. We have a dispenser, so. And then all you need is a little bit of tape, just 3/4 of an inch to an inch worth of tape. It doesn't take a lot. Don't overuse this tape. All right, this is the only roll you get, and it's pretty expensive for tape, so use it sparingly. You don't need much. So now what I'm going to do is tape diagonally, just like that. Yeah, everything's in frame. And there you go. Paper is taped to the board. So now we can draw on it. The next thing that we need to do is find the center of the drawing space. The center of the drawing is not in the center of the paper. If we were finding the center of the paper, well, what size piece of paper is this? This is A size paper. It is 8.5 inches by 11 inches. 8.5 by 11. So you could find the center of the paper be 4 1/4 and 5 1/2. But that's not the center of the drawing. This attached sheet, this paper is in the attachments for today's lesson. And you'll see where it says 5 1/2 for center of the drawing space. That's where we start. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is measure in 5 1/2 inches. There we go, right there. And just make a little mark. Just a little dot. It doesn't have to be much. Measuring down vertically, this is going to be 4 inches. So if I set on 6, I'm looking for 10. I set my everything up so it goes right through that dot that I just made for 5 1/2 inches. And then that is the center of my drawing space. 5 1/2 from one side, 4 inches from the top. That's where we're starting our drawing. Now, inlay is a square and a rectangle intertwined with each other. Take a look at your drawing. You can see that there's a half, it's all about a 1/2 inch thick. It all is a 1/2 inch thick, but there's a square and a rectangle. I'm looking at it right underneath the camera if you see me glancing down. I am going to start with a square. Just cuz. You don't have to do the same thing as me. So I need to measure out. That square is 4 inches. So I'm going to put, I could measure and put 0 on the center point, then go out 2 inches, then back 2 inches. What I'm going to do is put 2 on my center. Make a dot at 4 and make a dot at 0. Perfect. I also know that I'm going to need to know 1/2 inch inside of that. So while I'm here, I may as well do that. Now remember, I've done this a lot. This is your first time doing this, so it's going to take you a bit more time. It's going to be a little bit tougher, but stick with it. It's worth it. So it is a square, so measuring 2 inches up and 2 inches down, and the 1/2 inch. Good. All right. So now I'm going to put the graphite of my pencil right on one of those dots that I drew, and then bring my T-square up to it. That ensures that I have perfect lines going right there. And I'm going to draw it about as long as it needs to be. I would rather overshoot that line than undershoot it. It's easy to erase. It's a little bit harder to go back. And again, I'm drawing very, very lightly. Yeah, you can see this. And I'm drawing actually a little bit darker than I would if I were just drafting this for myself, because I want to make sure that you can see it in that camera. All right, so next, that horizontal line, that horizontal line. And you'll see that I'm doing all the horizontal lines just a second. All right, today we're going to be using the 45, 45, 90 triangle. I'm going to use it just for vertical lines. We don't have any angles in this. So, set that up. And you'll see how the two shapes, the square and the rectangle, intertwine, right? One overlaps the other at a certain point. So what I'm going to try to do is just guess where that's going to be and leave those lines short so that I don't have to go back and erase it. Whoa. See, I don't know if you can see that, but I accidentally just moved. I did not draw the line the full way down. I moved my triangle and it kind of messed up my line. It made a double line. All right, so that is my square. I didn't draw right there, and I didn't draw one of these lines. So I'm gonna go back and do that with the rectangle. So how long is the rectangle? The rectangle is 2 inches tall and 7 inches wide. I'm gonna do the width first. What's half of 7? 3.5. We put 3.5 right on the center point. Mark 0, mark 7. I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch in from either side. That's it. How tall is it? 2 inches, Mr. Jones. You're saying at home. So 2 inches, half of that, that's much easier. It's 1 inch, so I'm going to set up and go 1 inch higher, 1 inch lower, and I'm going to do the 1/2 inch now as well. All right, so this area, this vertical part is going to be of the square is going to be in front of the horizontal part of the rectangle. So I'm not even going to draw a line there. Keep that going. Now again, I've been doing this longer than you have, so I've got some feel to it. I know that my T-square is right up against the edge of my board. I can feel that. You should be checking every now and then to make sure that this edge is right up against the board. Okay? Good. Okay, now vertical lines. I'm going to cap off this rectangle. And now you'll start to see it come together. As I'm moving across, I left this part blank on my square, and I'm going to come back and finish that line off. One thing that might happen, it's happening to me right now, is this point of the triangle hits the T-square and doesn't let me go far enough left. Flip your triangle over. This is a problem-solving class. This is a thinking class, not a drawing class. All right? So, don't be fazed. Now, I have almost everything drawn. I have everything drawn, but I have a lot of extra lines on there. So what I'm going to do, go around with my eraser and eraser shield. Remember, the shield protects what you don't want to erase. Then your eraser will get rid of the rest. What I'm doing here is just lining that shield up with the line that I want to keep. It's all about precision. It's also about making sure you draw the same thing as the drawing in front of you. So I'm always double checking, making sure that yes, that line should be there, or no, that line should not be there. Take my triangle back out. I missed that. I undershot that line. I just had to erase something. It was actually easier for me to erase the whole line and go back and draw it back in than it was to try to use the shield. So, little things like that you'll learn with time. Remember, you are not expected to be amazing at this right off the bat, especially given our situation. What I do ask is that you give it a try and you follow along, because this class it's fascinating, especially if you've never done any of this before. All right, so I have it all down. That is Inlay. There's a couple of things though. Whoa. Well, first of all, forgot something. You should be drawing this light. The lighter you draw it, the easier it is to erase anything you don't want. So, that's it. But when you were to pass this in, you want it to be nice, dark, crisp lines, perfect corners, everything. All right, we usually knock off points if you just overshoot a line. If you have a overshot corner, a missed corner, like two lines that go up like this instead of a perfect corner, it would just overshoot itself. That's 5 points off. So you want to make sure that everything's perfect. So since I have that all down, what I'm going to do is take a softer pencil. Remember that you have pencils with different hardnesses. You have a 3H and an F. I'm going to come back and go back over all of my lines. I'm going to start with vertical for no real reason. You can do whichever one you want. To keep my pencil sharp, I'm going to rotate it as I pull it down. Now I am moving right to left because all of these lines, if I were to move left to right, then the graphite would smudge on the triangle and just drag it right across. But eventually I will get to the edge here. And now, horizontal lines. Messed up on that. See, you aren't expected to be perfect. I will go back and erase my mistake in a second. And unfortunately, I made the mistake while I'm using the darker, softer pencil. So it will be more difficult to erase than if I were using a 3H. That's my mistake right there. Can you see it? I'm just gonna quickly go around looking for any smudges. I'm not going to wipe off any eraser leftovers just because it's going to smudge. If you do, do it very, very lightly. Okay, that's Inlay. The drawing itself is done, but it's not ready to be handed in yet. I know what it is. You now know what this is, but in the world of drafting, you have to clarify exactly what each drawing is. You have to give it something called a title block. If you pull out this sheet again, look at this sheet again. This is what a title block looks like when it's done. All right? You say approved, great. That's usually for me. I'm going to say, yes, you passed it in and I gave you a 100 on it. Design technology, that's the name of this class. Oakmont Regional High School, that's here. Part name, in this case, it's Inlay, right? The next part would have a different name. Drawn by Mr. Jones. What's your name? Write it down there. All of these things, you're going to write part name Inlay. Drawn by Mr. Jones. Scale. This is full scale. Date. Today is the 12th, so I'm going to write 9/12/20, but write the date. And then DRNO, that's not Dr. No, this is not a Bond film, that is drawing number 1. This is drawing number 1. The next one will be drawing number 2, 3, 4, moving on and on. There's also this half inch, there's also the border, and around that border is 1/2 of an inch on every side. That's what it looks like. These are the measurements for it. So what you have to do is draw that 1/2 inch border. Then we're going to come up 5/8 of an inch and divide it into sections. We'll go over those measurements as we get to them. So I'm going to grab a different pencil, grab my scale, and start measuring. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, and now all I need is those measurements because I can come back in, grab that point with my pencil, there it is. Title blocking is always the last thing you're going to do. It's not too time consuming. It takes about 10 minutes. Depends on how fast you get. But it's also, you don't want to title block something you're not done with. If I were to get halfway through this drawing and realize that I screwed up, then I'd have to go back and start again. I'd grab a new piece of paper and do it all again. So don't title block until you're done, because then you're just wasting your time if you have to redo it. So this section is 5/8 of an inch tall. Where is 5/8? 5/8 is just past 1/2. 4/8 is 1/2. 5/8 is just past it. Now it's broken into 5 different little blocks here. 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, 2 inches, and then this is just the leftover, which has a length, but I don't know it. So you don't need to. 2 inches, right? That's the first one. 0 to 2. Next is 2.5. Well, so we got 2 going to 4.5. Then another 2.5. So then we're going to go from 4.5 to 7. You can measure every single one from 0 if you want to, but it's going to take more time. This is why measuring is a skill. The better you get at it, the faster you are, the more efficient you can be. More efficient you can be, more money you can make. Time that you save is money in your pocket. Don't forget that. Effectively. Don't cut corners. So now we have all that. Now, on here, you'll see these dashed lines, and they are all 1/8 of an inch away from each other. It's a 5/8 of an inch, but it's 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8. Look at the final version, they aren't there. So these lines have to be very, very, very light. And we will actually make a little trick to prevent you from even drawing these lines. But the first one, so you have them, and you know what you're doing, we're going to draw them in. I'm using a 3H pencil, and I am barely going to push down on this thing. I don't know if you'll be able to see these in the overhead shot of the video. That's good. if we were in class and you were drawing these light guidelines, you want to draw them just light enough where you could see them, but me as a teacher walking around the class could not see them. So if you're drawing in your kitchen right now, you can see those lines. Anyone else getting food from the fridge cannot see those lines. So, first thing is approved. How do we write approved? We don't write in our normal handwriting. Everything's all capitals, and it all has to fit in that 1/8 inch. All capitals. It's called single stroke Gothic. Approved. Grade. Design Technology, Oakmont Regional High School. If you're starting to run out of room, you can do HS for high school, but remember, keep this small. Part name. I already told you it's Inlay, but how do I know that? Underneath Inlay. Drawn by Mr. Jones. Scale is going to be full, but I'm still writing scale. I'm writing scale, colon, full. Remember, all caps. Date. Nine 12. And then D-R-N-O, drawing number. I'm not going to write drawing number, I'm not going to write the number 1 after that. I'm going to go down 2 rows so it's in line with grade, Oakmont Regional, drawn by, date. I'm just going to put the number 1. That's it. Now I'm going to quickly go over this. Get rid of those lines that don't need to be there as best I can. I need to erase the lines, but not the words. So it's a tricky challenge, which is why we're going to teach you another way to do this in the future. But, gotta walk before you can run. That's all good. I'm going to grab a softer pencil. I'll grab my F to keep the same as you. I overshot a corner up here, so I'll erase that. And over here, overshot almost every corner. Nice. Oof, that was ugly. Let's add everything over to this side. This is why you want to make sure you have enough room to get this done. You don't want to be fighting for the space with your siblings or anything. So find a clear, open, quiet space, and then you can do this without being disturbed. And that's it. That is Inlay. That is the first drawing. What I'm going to do to remove this tape is remove that. You don't want to rip towards the paper. You don't want to rip the paper itself. Now what you're going to do is take a picture of this piece of paper, and that's how you submit that you've done it. All right, so you're going to attach that picture to the Google Doc that's in this assignment, and then I can give you a grade for it. This was your first drawing. This was Inlay. We learned a ton today. All right, this was a lot. So hopefully you enjoyed it. We've got a lot more time for you to improve and a lot more time for you to try this out. Have a good afternoon.